How about you, Dane? Are you nervous being live for the first time?
No, I think I make plenty of mistakes that usually don't get cut out anyway. So, even though it's not live, my business has been out there for quite some time now. Almost 200 episodes in.
Your tism doesn't let you get nervous at all?
Oh, all the time.
The splash of the tism doesn't, you don't feel any nervousness over there?
Yeah, well, but I just push it down.
To go, right, push him down. We were supposed to go live last week. What happened, Dane?
What did happen? Oh, I think was it you or was it the behind-the-scenes crew that was derelict in their duties leading right up to showtime?
I'm a derelict in and of itself, but there is no way that last week fell on my shoulders whatsoever. I think we gotta. To suffice to say, we ran a dry test because you got to test your gear before you get in the water to make sure that it works because you don't want to get underwater. Speaking of scuba terms, you don't want to get underwater and realize you can't breathe when you're 30 feet down. It's a big problem, right? So anyway, we dry ran it last week, unintentionally kind of, but we followed protocol accidentally, and now we're safe. So now we're safely live, Dane. And it feels
safely live.
Is it everything that you thought it could be?
Well, hey, listen, I really like your, test your, what was your analogy there? Test your equipment, test your what?
It's a dry run, dry test your gear, right?
Yeah. I especially like that analogy because, that analogy for how we tried to pull it off last week was, we were about 5 minutes to showtime and we were on our way over the store to buy the equipment. That's how we were testing it. That's a normal procedure for our family. We were right at home with that kind of stuff. That is a WMD production if there ever was one. But
go ahead.
I was just did you have anything that you wanted to tell the people before we get
No,
into
it's
the
just
show for the day?
a little soft apology and then we could jump in. That's all I wanted to do. You ready to jump in?
Well, listen, all 5 of you that got our announcement at 5:15 p.m. on Friday last week that we were going live at 6 p.m. We apologize because we know that you planned your entire 45 minutes around seeing us.
If you waited the whole time until this episode, you are the true champions here. You're the real MVPs.
That's right. You are our day ones. So
exactly.
With that being said, David, are we ready to talk to the memes on the other side of the jump in?
Let's go.
Welcome to Weapons and Meme Destruction Podcast, episode 194, which can be found at wmdpodcast.com/194. You can get the audio only on any podcast catcher. Just search Weapons of Meme Destruction. You can get the video here, where you're seeing us live on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, and now X. You can, I'm not doing the rest of it. It's all to the back. My tism's off. My tism's flaring, David. It's flaring.
Listen, it's not your tism, it's your rhythm, is what it is. You had a rhythm for 193 episodes, and now we're kind of.
So, what are we talking about Dane, this week?
Took the words out of my mouth, Dane. We've got Butker kicks it Catholic style. Apparently, Butker got in a little bit of a. If you don't know who Butker is, what's his first name, Dane? Because I only know from the Harrison. Yeah. Not a bad name. All right, Harrison Butker, also known as the Kansas City Chiefs starting kicker, gave a commencement speech.
Pretty damn good kicker, too, by the way.
Pretty reliable. Not quite as Vinatieri reliable, but pretty damn reliable.
Gets the job.
But what did he do, Dane? What got him in such hot water?
Yeah, on the Culture Corner this week, we're talking about Harrison Butker's speech to Benedictine College, which, as you longtime memes know, David and I happen to be from Kansas, and Benedictine College is in Atchison, Kansas. It is, as the name would suggest, I guess non-Catholics may not know, but Benedictine is an order, and they've established colleges all over the country, maybe the world even. But yes, it is a Catholic university. So, let me just preface this whole conversation about the outrage over his speech.
Set the stage.
a bunch of secular, progressive, blue-haired Femnazis that allegedly don't give a shit about anything the Catholic Church says or does other than to denigrate it, are very upset that a Catholic gave a commencement speech at a Catholic university to graduates from that Catholic university who are predominantly Catholic about Catholic teaching. If it doesn't make sense to you that that group of people, the non-Catholics that, think the church is backward and stupid and we shouldn't listen to anything else it has to say at all, are really upset about what a Catholic had to say about Catholic faith, if you're confused, you're in the right spot.
So, first of all, if you're hiring a kicker for your college commencement speech, it's probably not a large school. And as you mentioned before, it's in Atchison, Kansas, which is not a huge city in Kansas, if you are not following along with...
As far as huge
Kansas
cities in Kansas go.
Yeah, exactly. Even Kansas City's in Missouri, those stupid... Don't... That's just Kansas logic. Don't ask me to... Don't start. Anyway, so I'm sure Harrison was like walking into that situation going, you know what, I'm going to lay down the law. I'm in a friendly place. And I feel like we could talk about the faith that binds us all and how our viewpoints kind of should be. And apparently it's a pretty goddamn slow news day because it's not like he's been it's not like he took the mic at the Super Bowl party and he's like, Mary, have kids, wah! Like, God's awesome. Like, he didn't do that. They had to like track his ass down at what is Benedictine College? That's just the name of it?
Benedictine College, yep.
All right, well, like I said, they really took that, if ever there's a crime, we will be there. If ever there's somebody that stands up against a tranny's rights, we will be there, by God. No matter how small, we will search down in Atchison, Kansas for a kicker in the NFL's commencement speech to get royally pissed about.
Now that you bring that up about, going down to the micro to find things to get outraged over, that reminds me of our experience, not to make this about us. But
it's always about us, Dan.
At Weapons of Destruction. That reminds me of our experience and what we talked about on YouTube with all the bans and strikes and everything else like this. Like, really? YouTube censors? You couldn't find anything better to do than to come and, try to completely nuke a 200-person subscriber podcast on your platform. Like, we're the biggest fish that you had to fry on those particular days. And multiple days within a few months period.
They let us know they were not happy with us.
Yes, they did. So,
once we were on their radar, they're like, hold on, what are they saying? And then they went all the way through our back catalog.
And if this is your first episode here, let me just remind you, David is wont to do this a lot of times, where he makes an incredibly profound point completely unintentionally. And that incredibly profound point in this context,
That's how I live most of my life. Just falling backwards into things.
Before we get further into the Butker speech and the reaction to it, is, as we said all throughout COVID, right? When they had, 80, 90% uptake or whatever, when, the fear porn was really, doing its job, and there were those 10 or 15% holdouts, and they were just losing their minds over it. And remember, the point that we made then was, this is the nature of totalitarian progressivism. Because they have attached, undeservedly so, moral righteousness to their ever-changing, constant pursuit of change and change for change's sake, that they cannot abide a single dissenting voice. That's why they wanted to burn Florida to the ground. Everybody that was formerly on the left saying that Sweden was, this great, hallmark of what the future should be pre-COVID, absolutely hated Sweden for not, locking down hard enough during that time. And it didn't matter if it was one nail out of 10,000 that was sticking up. They were going to obsess compulsively over trying to hammer down that one nail. And that plays out in all aspects of society because that's what these people's ideology is. It is obsessive totalitarianism. If it's a 181-person podcast, they're going to try to get it nuked for saying the wrong thing. If it's an NFL kicker, despite that he's a 3-time Super Bowl champion, as Broncos fans, as much as it pains us to admit that part.
Stop it. Okay.
If it's a kicker at I don't know what the graduation is at Benedictine College, maybe like a couple thousand, graduates, max.
He's probably talking to 5 people.
they're going
right,
to
you
reach
guys.
all the way down and try to absolutely nuke him and the college, for saying the no things. And, that's just the way these people operate. When people act like that, they are telling you they are totalitarians at heart.
Well, by the way, too, did he say anything egregious? Did he say that Catholics need to start taking over the world and we need to start, casting out all the other people that don't believe in Catholicism, which is, or calling the people that don't believe in Catholicism like deplorables or not really human, or was there any fiery vitriol that was in there, or was it just basically his viewpoint on Catholicism and where the world's going?
The only statement that could even be, if you were giving it the most uncharitable interpretation you could possibly come up with, is he said, he was talking about the Associated Press, how they wrote negative articles about the college. And I don't even think, obviously it wasn't related to his speech because he said it during the speech, but whatever this AP article was that he was referencing, is he said something to the effect of, the writers at the AP didn't expect, the people from this little college to meet their sort of, derision with pride. And then he just made the kind of passing comment about not the sort of sinful pride that has an entire month dedicated to it. Now, obviously, people have taken and run with that, which again, it's an uncharitable interpretation of what he meant by that, but it's not a completely out of left field one like the other things that we're getting ready to talk about, his other sound bites that, lit people's hair on fire. It's easy to take that statement and be like, oh, well, he's saying that everybody that is under the general umbrella of pride, pick your favorite rainbow flag, is being sinful. Well, two things about that. First of all, that is general Catholic teaching. I hate to break that to you, but that's not the only faith in the world that thinks that. And the actual teaching in that regard, shared amongst almost all Christians, is that you love the sinner, hate the sin. And in one context, it can be the LGBT stuff, fine. But in other contexts, it's any other sin that you can possibly imagine. Greed, avarice, murder, adultery. Love the sinner, hate the sin.
Gluttony.
Again, that's just general, Catholic teaching. So again, if you're offended by the fact that somebody's faith makes them think that the way you live your life is sinful, again, my question to you, and the reason why I preface this with the whole thing about being outraged about a Catholic talking to Catholics about Catholicism, is what do you care, right? Yeah. If you are not Catholic and he says, my faith tells me that what you're doing is a sin, I don't hate you, I don't wish ill upon you, I pray for you or whatever, as much as you think that that's a useless endeavor, the point is, it's his faith, it's his belief, it is what it is. And if that's not your faith and your belief, then keep it moving. Who cares? And what did he say to really hurt you? But, they lost their minds over it anyway.
It seems like that side needs you to agree with them full-heartedly for them to feel comfortable doing something that if it really, let's say turnabout's fair play, and then the LGBTQ said, I think that you're going to LGBTQ RSTUVYXWZ hell because you are a Catholic and you believe what you believe. Does that Catholic go, oh shit, I need to get rid of the LGBTQ because they made me feel bad about the thing and now I'm doubting whether I should be doing the thing? No, they don't do that. So what are you doing that makes it so necessary for everyone to say that it's all right that you're doing it?
Again, even if you agree with them 95% of the way, but you deviate 5%, they want to take off your head. And again, it's that same tyrannical mentality. It's that not only does everybody need to get on board with our program, again, even if we just made it up, and 2 years ago, even we would have thought that was crazy, the thing that we made up now. But even if you say, yeah, I kind of agree with this thing that you made up 5 minutes ago, all but this tiny little part, they lose it. Their hair's on fire.
Remember when Antifa was going around in different places during the BLM peaceful protests, mostly peaceful protests, and they were like stopping people on the street and making them like do the like Black Power thing and forcing them to do it under threat of physical violence. So the anti-fascists were taking a fascistic approach.
They were making you do the special hand gesture while shouting the special words to make sure that you're a good person. Or at least an acceptable person that's not going to get, a bike anchor chain up to the side of your head. So,
would you be a good member of the proletariat?
So let's get into some of the specific things that were said in the Butker speech and what drove people the most nuts. One of the first things that he said, and again, the context is proper. One of the first things he said, or I want to start with, what was the theme of the speech? The theme was about staying in your lane, because staying in your lane is a key to good leadership, no matter what your lane has to be, whether it be in politics, whether it be in the church, whether it be in your family, whatever the case may be. Stay in your lane, and to the extent that it makes sense for you, embrace tradition. And he didn't just apply this. If all you did was read headlines, you would think he just applied this to women. He actually started out the first 5 or 10 minutes of the speech absolutely excoriating the clergy of the Catholic Church, saying that priests and bishops and even the Pope, were obsessed with being what he called the Church of the Nice, in the sense that they were ready to compromise on matters of faith, core tenets of the Catholic faith, in order to be more socially acceptable, to be more with it, to be more with the times, and to change the church's core teachings in order to become more popular and get more adherents. And again, with staying in your lane, he's like, if you're going to be a bishop, if you're going to be a priest, if you're going to be a church leader, you need to stay in your lane. You need to lead the flock according to Catholic teaching, not whatever the secular the secular obsession of the day. So that was about the first 5 to 10 minutes. The first quarter to half of his speech was excoriating the church itself. But then he made some kind of tongue-in-cheek comments. For example, one, he, I guess, drew down the ire of the Swifties by making a tongue-in-cheek statement that when priests or bishops become too familiar with their clergy instead of leading them, that familiarity breeds contempt. He said, as his teammate's girlfriend says, and we're supposed to be terrified of the Swifties because
she did not come up with that fucking phrase, by the way. That was a phrase before she ever existed.
So that's the first kind of group that he apparently made angry. But then after he moved on from criticizing the clergy first, he then moved on to secular leaders like politicians. He was talking about how Fauci, who is allegedly a Catholic, was the kind of orchestrator of the terrible, evil policies that all throughout COVID led to a situation where priests could not go and give last rites, could not go and perform the sacraments that all Catholics are supposed to uphold as really important aspects of their faith, that COVID policies allowed many people to die during COVID without receiving the sacraments. And then he talked about Joe Biden making the sign of the cross at an abortion rally while claiming to be Catholic. So again, back to that theme of staying in your lane, he moved from church leaders to secular leaders to say, listen, just because you call yourself Catholic doesn't mean that you have any sort of monopoly on truth and righteousness. You're going to have to live according to the dictates of your faith, and that requires you staying in your lane, not, being a bad leader and formulating bad policies because, you're letting yourself, kind of blow with the winds of whatever popular opinion is of the time.
Well, that's the point to lead, is to not blow with the winds and to keep the bearing. That's leadership. I guess, again, we haven't seen good leadership in a very long time. So it's hard to remember what it looks like, but that is what leadership is supposed to do. What else did he say, Dane?
More on the leadership that we experience later in this show. Stick around for that. We promise you're going to enjoy it.
Ooh, that's a steaming bowl of foreshadowing you just served up there, Dane.
After he moved on from the secular politicians, he made the statement that we've already talked about the whole, month of pride, that month of the sin of pride that has an entire month dedicated to it. So we won't rehash that here. But then we get into the real, I guess, as mad as those other things made people, this one really drove them crazy. And it's primarily because it was led from the front by the Femnazis. The chronically offended emotional hypochondriacs that just, cannot stop themselves from manufacturing things to be offended over if their life isn't sufficiently difficult. I'm going to paraphrase generally what he said, but I encourage you to go back and watch it for yourself, because apparently all the headlines written about this next statement and everything that the Femnazis were getting upset about, none of the things they got upset about he said. But he said generally this. He said, listen, I want to talk to you ladies in particular because I feel that you have had the most diabolical lies told to you. And he starts going in about how the lies of pursue your career, do everything other than become a wife and mother, because that's going to be a better, more fulfilling life for you. But really what you're going to be more fulfilled by is by being a wife and mother. He said, no doubt, many of you are sitting there thinking right now about all of your careers and promotions that you're going to have. And he said, first of all, he told them congratulations. He didn't tell them you wasted your time, your degree's stupid, why did you do this? He didn't say any of that. He said, first of all, congratulations. I have no doubt that you're going to be excited about the things that you achieve in your professional life.
It is a commencement speech, after all.
Right. But, and this is the key thing. This is a direct quote of what he said. He said, I would venture to guess. Okay? He's telling you he's guessing. He's not saying this is a fact. He's not making some pronouncement on high that women are less than. He said, I would venture to guess that most of you, again, not all of you, there might be some of you that choose to stay single for life. There might be some of you that, for whatever reason, just don't want to get married or have kids or whatever. But I would venture to guess that most of you will, again, this is where I'm paraphrasing, find the most joy, fulfillment in your marriage and having children. Again, totally unoffensive statement, because I would venture to guess, me, Dane, your humble half of the hosts of WMD podcast, would venture to guess that as a statement of objective reality, he's probably correct about that. If you fast forward 10 or 15 years and you poll every female graduate in that class, and assuming, let's only poll the ones that, obviously had a marriage and kids, because they're the only ones he's talking to, right? Not the ones that chose to stay single. And if you ask them, build your list of things you accomplished in your career and your kids. What are you most proud of? You're hardly going to find a mother that isn't, like Eminem's mother, or ones that are, chopping their kids' parts off and feeding them hormones before puberty. Unless they're those kind of mothers, you will hardly find a mother who will not say that their most crowning achievement, the thing that they're most proud of, is their children. That's just a completely normal thing for a parent to say about their children. I am, by society's measure, a very, successful individual professionally, but that pales in comparison to the way I feel about my daughter. So why is that an offensive thing to say? But David, that's the general paraphrase of the thing that drove the most people crazy, generated the most headlines, and has everybody losing their shit.
In only Dane fashion, could you take a phrase and paraphrase it, and you probably took about 5 minutes longer than it actually took to say the phrase to explain what the fuck. You know what paraphrase means, Dane? Anywho,
Yeah,
I digress.
I didn't want to pretend that I was quoting him directly. That's what I'm saying.
I know. I get it. We all love you here, Dane. You're in a safe place. But no, it is a trope, and it's like I think it's said so much by parents that, like, I almost think that they're trying to convince you just as hard as they're trying to convince themselves. They're like, everyone's a treasure. I was successful. I won 5 Super Bowls, but it's my kids, it's my family that I really care about, But I mean, Cristiano Ronaldo said that that's the important part, and he's the GOAT. So, you know, he doesn't have to lie. All right, he's living his best life, and he's still saying it too. So I kind of gotta, just like on that anecdotal evidence alone, think like, hey, maybe parenthood's pretty awesome. But yeah, and again, he's not condemning. He didn't condemn either. He didn't say, well, you should become a mom or else you're kind of a piece of shit. Yeah. He was just like, well, you can do both, and I bet you money you're going to find more satisfaction out of being a mother than you ever will. Because let's be honest. Let's address the elephant in the room. Who here hates their job? Raise your hand. I hate my job. I never really
person
that I've ever talked to is
T.
like, unless their like job is you know, a YouTube like gaming streamer or some shit like that, or a musician, or actually they hate their job too. They're like, fuck, I gotta go on tour. This is gonna be forever. Like most people hate their jobs, but then people act like women have to go out and get that job or else they're not women, and that doesn't even make sense either. So why do women have to go out and get jobs? Why do they have to fight upward? And I'm not saying they can't. I'm not saying they shouldn't. I'm just saying, why do they have to? Like, the women's lib movement was to get to be able to do it, not to have to do it. But now we live in a society that, I mean, like you said before, I would be a relatively successful person as well if you looked at my, numerics. And it takes two incomes to support us comfortably. And it's almost like they knew that they were going to create a society that needed two incomes so they could charge extra for it. So that's why they got more people into the workforce. It almost seems like every good thing also comes with a side of shit to have to eat along with it. And I feel like that's really where the women's lib movement took a turn for the worse, because now you have to work as a woman as opposed to get to work.